Hello, welcome everybody to today's normative webinar. We're going to be focusing today on sustainability reporting requirements, so how to comply today, but also how to handle change tomorrow, particularly relevant right now with the context of the omnibus proposal. So really looking forward to getting stuck into that with you all today. We're just going to give a minute for a few more people to join as everyone's logging on. I see lots of people are already. So while we just give people 30 seconds to log on, it would be great if you could add in a chat. I'd love to hear where everyone's joining us from today. I know across our team, we're spread across Sweden and London at the moment. But we've got Tiago in South London. You're not far from the team in the London office. Got Helsinki, Norway, Malmö. Amanda, you're not too far from where I am right now as well. Good to have you with us. More Stockholm, Italy, Derbyshire, very nice. Turkey and Finland, Luxembourg. Safe to say we are very well represented. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I will start proceedings now. I think we've got enough people who have joined. So I'll pull on to what we're going to cover today in a second. Just a quick piece of housekeeping. We're going to be running 45 minutes today. We will be sending the recording to all of you after the webinar as well, so that you can go back over certain points or share this with colleagues if you need to as well. Throughout today's webinar, please do submit your questions. You can see the question tab in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So any point throughout the webinar, please do add your questions there. We'll get to as many as we can in our Q&A section at the end of the webinar. If we aren't able to get to your particular question today, then we will follow up with you after the webinar, but please do add those in there. And also just a quick ask, when the webinar closes, you'll be taken to a post-webinar survey. So a couple of short questions. If you have 30 seconds after the webinar, we'd really appreciate it to get your feedback and make sure that we're focusing on what really matters to you as well. Okay, so on to today's agenda and our speakers. We've got an expert panel lined up for you today to take you through our topic. And we're going to start with my colleague, Dr. Alexander Schmidt, will be guiding you through what to look out for in the changing ESG regulatory landscape and what this means for your business. We're also going to dig into the wider importance of sustainability reporting and the positive impacts it can have on your business, even if you aren't required to report just yet today. So Alex will be taking us through all of that. And then we also have Riyadh from our excellent climate strategy team here at Normative. Riyadh's going to take us through what your business can do to make sure it's ready to adapt to regulatory changes as they arrive, and also how Normative can help you on that journey as well. We'll have that time put aside for Q&A for any other questions that you have for the team as well at the end of the webinar. So just to kick things off, I'll just introduce both of our speakers and ask you, Alex, first, just to give a couple of words on who you are, your role at Normative, and just say hello to everyone joining the session today.
Yes, happy to be with you all today. So I'm Alex, I'm heading Normative's research and sustainability team. In that capacity, working a lot across the space with regulators, policymakers, researchers, such as our friends from Oxford and Net Zero and others. And yet that's exactly also what I want to talk to, of course, today. The macro, the economic, the overall outlook of policy, of regulation standards, and the ecosystem view of where things are heading towards. So we're looking forward to sharing more with you in a few minutes.
Fantastic. Well, great to have you with us, Alex, as always. And also we have Riyadh with us, one of our fantastic climate strategy advisors here at Normative. Could you give us a couple of words, Riyadh, on you and your role before we get started?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Riyadh Wakim. I'm As introduced, Climate Strategy Manager here at Normative, leading a part of our Climate Strategy Advisory team. We are the team that works hand in hand with all of our customers on their carbon accounting journey, and more importantly as well on their reporting, compliance and reduction journeys. And I'm here today to shed some light on how we to help our customers in terms of reporting and making sure that they're always compliant when it comes to ESG requirements.
Brilliant. Thank you, Riyadh. Looking forward to getting into that. So very, very quickly, before we jump into the main meat of the discussion today, give you a quick introduction to the normative for those of you that aren't familiar with us here. Our vision is very clear. It's to make known and reduce the sustainability impact of all economic activities on the planet. What that means in reality is that we spend a lot of time and expertise to deliver really accurate carbon calculations. The reason being, like, when companies can see their emissions in granular detail, they can manage them, they can report on them and adhere to compliance regulation. They can almost also implement reduction initiatives as well, and as a result can not only move towards net zero targets, but they can benefit their business, make themselves more relevant, resilient as a business in future as well. So this is something, and strands of this, that we'll go into in more detail on today's webinar. But very quickly, before we get started, we have a little poll where we'd love to hear your thoughts on how well you understand the ESG reporting requirements that are relevant to your business. So if you could take a second to share your thoughts in that poll that has just popped up on your screen. I see many of you are doing so already. 34% of you, around 34% thinking you understand it fairly well and moderately well, as well. 16% very well. I'm glad that you're feeling so comfortable, and 15% not very well at all. As you can imagine, like you all know, there's going to be a range of different setups and situations across different companies, and we come into contact with this every day, our team and Riyadh and Alex. So no surprise there. If you're looking for extra guidance, you're in the right place. We will start by kicking off the real heart of today's webinar content, and I'll hand over to you, Alex. That's probably a good way to start getting everyone thinking about how prepared they currently are, because you're going to take us through compliance, a constantly moving target. So I will hand over to you now, Alex.
Thank you so much, Mike, for the nice intro. And again, from my side, also welcome everyone here. I see you have a really colorful plate of countries also and cities. So great to have you all joining us. And this also shows, of course, the breadth of interest in this topic. And, well, why is it of such a huge interest in general? Well, because the one thing that I can already say, which won't change anytime soon, or at least not for the better, is what we see happening around us. Let's put aside for a second regulation and disclosure. I know there's a lot right now on your mind, especially after yesterday's news here, especially in the EU, but also, of course, countries affected by business in the EU. Let's put this aside for a second. We're going to dive into it later. What is otherwise happening? Well, the real world implications of a changing climate are getting more and more tangible for companies, for people around the planet. So I just had here, of course, the picture here with fires, with wildfires, is a very timely one, but also just on the climate science perspective, the record heat that we have experienced last year and continuing to experience this year, so the first month of the year at least, is just puzzling for climate scientists, which in turn makes us very, very worried, because if they don't understand what's happening, we have to brace just for the worst and have to make sure that we adapt and we prepare and we do everything we can to limit the damage, pretty much. So that is the constant in the background, no matter what else is going to happen in the space of regulation. However, let's look at what will happen in the space of climate policy in 2025 and appreciate this is a very high-level overview, of course, which is why we have a Q&A section and why we're happy to support you with more afterwards. So real quick, it's a broad mix of national targets. So we have the so-called NDCs, nationally determined contributions, which are due to be renewed, actually have been due to be renewed earlier this month, and most countries have missed the target. They will, however, update their targets very soon, working towards the UN conference end of the year. We have first mandatory CSRD reports due in this quarter, first IFRS S1, S2 reports equally due, and just yesterday the draft came out for the Omnibus simplification package. We'll surely speak to it more later. The next quarter also will hold important updates in the policy space. So we're going to have discussions around the EU digital product passports, taxonomy reports will be due, the European Green Bond Regulation, and last but not least, towards end of the quarter in London, there's a first big conference on climate. So these are the first 6 months of the year. Now, looking ahead of the second half of the year, we have further important conferences. We have New York Climate Week, which by now became one of the major climate gatherings of business, policymakers, researchers of the year. And then we have a very important milestone with COP30 in Belém in Brazil, where we're going to discuss those NDCs, where topics like phasing out of fossil fuel will be picked up, and a lot of conversations will be around how can we reach the first milestone of 2030 targets for companies and for countries. Also, end of the year, the phase-in of the EU deforestation law will come into effect for larger companies, and all eyes are also on the US and California in particular, where we also expect the disclosure laws coming into effect, with a few questions still to be answered. So a lot happening there, and again, lots more details to be added. This is just to give you almost like a highlight reel of what we expect there to happen, but who knows, we're just in February or March almost, so there is still a lot of room for more surprises. Now, a few constants, however, amidst this changing and very, very dynamic environment. I summarized a few. So I always like to distinguish between what are push factors and what are pull factors for all of you. I expect most of you from the private sector here to actually act on your own sustainability agenda. And the push factors clearly emerge around regulation. So I have a screenshot here that shows the uptick in regulation over the last years. And it's a clear trend here. Now, secondly, we have other push factors that are around alignment. So luckily, and that's again speaking a bit to the Omnibus package, we see increasing alignment around standards. And they're going to have more common metrics, and they're going to have more common referrals to, for example, the TCFD or the Greenhouse Gas Protocol as the foundation of how to do carbon accounting, which is also, by the way, the foundation of Normative's platform and offering, of course. So there's going to be that push for companies to do more in this space. But more importantly, because yes, pushing companies to do their job is great, we unfortunately also, of course, then see if there is less of a regulatory pressure, for example, that companies might just try to lean back and avoid doing anything. So there are also clear pull factors for companies to want to do more in their sustainability agenda. One of them is there is an increasingly clear business case for sustainability. It's just the choice that you have to make in order to be still relevant in a few years from now. So that is clearly, I have one article here shown by, it's one example here from the CEO Climate Alliance, where they have actually achieved both growth in terms of revenue business growth and at the same time emissions reductions. So it is not anymore a clear, like, either or, either be profitably and grow or be sustainable. No. These two go hand in hand, and you actually have to combine them to have a viable business in a few years from now. And last but not least, also the cost of inaction is becoming increasingly clear to companies. So we don't just talk about regulatory pressure and potentially growth opportunities. It's simply about business resilience, assessing climate-related risk for your organization, for your probably global operations there. because inevitably you will be affected by the changing environment, no matter where this change is being driven from. So I strongly believe that sustainability will literally become the ability to sustain your business in the future. So not optional at all anymore. To summarize, what is next for you? What should be next for you on your radar when it comes to regulation, disclosure, and sustainability in general? So I think the high-level summary is focus on standardization and supply chain transparency. Both will be observed. So reporting requirements will converge around key metrics, for example, emissions calculations, especially across supply chain. In order to meet those, you will have to have transparency over your supply chain. But this will, of course, also drive your resilience. When you know the key bottlenecks in your supply chain, referring to climate-related risk factors, you will also be in a much better position to actually act on those risk factors before they materialize. Yeah, so don't just see, for example, the CSRD, double materiality assessment, as a burden, as I have to jump through all of these hoops in order to meet those requirements. No, see it really as an opportunity to have a thorough assessment of what actually are the topics that should be top of mind. Is it water, for example? Like, what drives my carbon intensity, my carbon footprint? Because that is not just about, oh, I have a high footprint, I need to report something here, or potentially have to, pay a price on the carbon in the future. It's also about where are the most fragile parts of my supply chain, of my business. Because again, these will increasingly materialize, unfortunately, as the science and real world events around us show and have shown. So last but not least, what I really want to drive home here for all of your private sector people, sustainability is strategy. It is not anymore a nice to have, optional on the side, maybe even just a PR or marketing gimmick. No, it has to be an integral part of your business strategy to drive product innovation, to drive market growth, but also just simply to ensure you still have a thriving business in the future. Look at sustainability issues, take them seriously, and take them as an opportunity to actually set yourself up for future success. No, this was a lot. I'm sure we're going to dive into it a bit more in our next conversation Q&A, but for now, handing back over to Mike.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. And certainly a complex landscape, I think it's fair to say, but as always, you've done a brilliant job of making it really clear. And for everyone on the call in your businesses, what you can prioritize, what you can do, and what you should focus on now. And beyond just compliance, as you're ending on there, Alex, those real business benefits as well that a core sustainability strategy can bring. That sets us up nicely before we dive into Riyadh's section for our second and final poll of today's webinar. So before we go into Riyadh's commentary on how you can prepare your business to adjust to regulatory changes, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So you're able to see the poll pop up on your screen now. How well prepared is your business to adapt if there are changes to ESG disclosure requirements in the next 2 years? We'd love to get your thoughts on that before we jump into Riyadh's section. And I can see, again, you're very quick off the mark, all of you today. Lots of response coming in. Yeah, a fair amount of you, 35%, feeling that you're moderately ready and moderately well prepared and fairly well prepared as well. So you're in good shape. There are some key steps that Riyadh can take us through now to consider to make sure you're fully buttoned up and ready to adapt as the regulatory landscape evolves. So I will hand over to you now, Riyadh, to take us through the section on how to prepare your business for this change.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. And yes, with all these regulatory changes and updates and the pull and push factors that Dr. Alex has mentioned earlier, I would like to take a bit of a bit of time to showcase the evolution and the creation, kind of the timeline when it came to ESG disclosures, whether in the forms of frameworks, standards, or even regulations. That whole world of ESG disclosure has been here for quite some time. The GRI initiatives being one of the first at the time in the late 90s, but also taken up by Greenhouse Gas Protocol in early 2000s, all the way to where we are today with regulations and standards like the ESRS that are being rolled out from a regulatory point of view. You see a lot of logos here, and a lot of them kind of stand alone today. In this graph, this was definitely a work that is both kind of spearheaded by companies, but also by a lot of nonprofits and a lot of also non-governmental organizations. And there's definitely, as you can see towards the end of this timeline, there's a lot of uptake when it came to ESG standards and frameworks, all the way to regulations in the last few years. And this was primarily due to reasons such as the United Nations Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, that were rolled out and signed by all governments in the late 2015, all the way to COVID, and then the importance that was highlighted to ESG in order to, and then the climate crisis that definitely kind of took a lot of the spotlight of this conversation. While you see those kind of logos, it's quite overwhelming to think of which one do you need to follow and which standard or which framework kind of maps to your need, and then which regulation applies to you as well, when and how, also with all the conversations happening on CSRD. I think what I would like to shed light is that none of these, or majority of these standards and frameworks, they were never kind of created in isolation. Whether some of them are more technical and some of them are more specific to certain topics, all of them in a lot of ways have been revolving around the same kind of rationale, right? Which are non-financial kind of implications, whether environmental, social, or governance related, of companies and corporations and cities and so forth. Regardless of their minor differences, there's a lot of efforts around consolidating a lot of these frameworks and standards. And as a matter of fact, if we just take another view for how these kind of, and that's just one snapshot of how these kind of standards and frameworks talk to each other. A lot of these, like the GRI, for example, as a standard, was very much integrated and consolidated with other frameworks, but also TCFD, CDP as a carbon disclosure principles, as well as a very specified framework also integrated or consolidated with the IFRS. All of these might have different disclosure requirements, minor, but all of them in principle share the same structure, share the same rationale in principle. And companies, or what we know for a fact, is if ESG is managed from within the business and not to Dr. Alex's point, is a nice to have, but a business embeds ESG and sustainability with all of its functions, preparing for these standards and for the changes that come in with these standards is not that different, or it does not impose major implications. Because as long as you have the management approaches to understand non-financial disclosures, and for these non-financial disclosures to be spread out throughout the business from functions and regions, depending on risk areas, then minor changes to a certain disclosure requirement and a metric are usually they would not disturb kind of, or would not be a compliance issue that we have seen a lot today, due to the fact that a lot of companies do not historically have a lot of sustainability mandate within their remits. One thing that I'd like to mention as well is a lot of these frameworks and standards rely on a lot of common grounds of standardization. One of which is probably the most complicated bit, and you see CDP mentioned here, but is probably the gist of a lot of the conversations, is climate change, is carbon accounting. And the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, for example, I'm just going to jump to the slide that delves a bit deep into this, is a perfect example of how a certain standard was the laying ground kind of the rule setter for all greenhouse gas accounting principles for almost every other logo that you saw on the first slide. So the greenhouse gas protocol is considered to be the standard that is used across all of these reporting frameworks. And the reason being is it is one of the most kind of structured and granular greenhouse gas accounting principles when it comes to corporate greenhouse gas accounting. And to this example, if companies and when companies, and that goes as well for all of our customers today, use the greenhouse gas protocol as an accounting standard for all greenhouse gases, then that is a given that they are very much compliant with a lot of different standards, such as the CDP, GRI, CSRD, and integrated reporting, and many others as well. And once you take that into consideration and the standardization process of it, the question is what can and how we, for example, here at Normative, see this standardization in terms of reporting, in terms of keeping our customers compliant, but more importantly, in terms of keeping up with all of these regulations and changes. And that's how we do things at Normative today, and that's how we ensure that our customers are always ahead of the curve in terms of understanding and being ready, being future as well, having a readiness when it comes to being compliant with regulations and requirements, whether not in different jurisdictions. Based on the greenhouse gas protocol, when carbon baseline is established, and that's what we always establish with all of our customers. All of the work that is done under this framework then can be used through a lot of our services. We complement our carbon accounting, as mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, with our CSRD offering. You see it here on the slide as well, and that again uses the greenhouse gas protocol as a baselining mechanism or accounting principles. And that also allows us to provide other services that span across different standards. And this would be CDP, this would be the Science-Based Targets Initiative as well, but also being ahead of the curve, as I said earlier, and looking into upcoming regulations such as CBAM, something that we explore very closely with our customers to ensure that they're again ahead of the curve and they're ready for such regulations and requirements. And that really spans from the fact that, again, as I probably started my section here saying that ESG disclosures, no matter how different they are, as long as this is embedded within companies day-to-day, different departments, and within the business context of the company, then that definitely starts, that's a very strong ground to start from. And that's what we really utilize here at Normative by ensuring the adherence to the greenhouse gas protocol. We then always make our customers ready in principle for any legislation, and we support that as well with our climate strategy advisory team. That is a trained team on standards and frameworks when it comes to ESG disclosures to complement. And that's it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Riyadh. And I know you're just scratching the surface there, really, of the work that you and all of our team of climate strategy advisors can do for businesses. I know it's a great comfort and support for businesses across multiple industries, not just have the platform Normative, but your expert guidance dedicated to each customer as well. So thank you for giving us a quick snapshot of what you can do and how we could support businesses. Riyadh, that's fantastic. If that's piqued your interest, then you can go ahead and schedule a demo with us and get a special consultation with one of our climate specialists at Normative today. Victoria's just added the link in there, so that should pop up for you. If you click on the book demo button there, then you can find a time to talk with our team and go through your specific priorities, your specific challenges in your business as well. We would love to help you on that. Okay, that brings us on to the Q&A part of today's webinar, and thank you all of you for sending your question in already. We already have a number coming through in the questions tab. If there is something that you haven't dropped into that tab or has just occurs to you as we're addressing the first questions, you've still got time. Please just use the question tab in the bottom right corner of your screen and throw your question in there, and we will do our best to answer it. If we can't get to you today, then we will follow up afterwards. But we'll kick off. And Alex, if I may, I'll bring you back in after a little break there. The first question I think would be great for you to take on. It comes from John Dooley. Thank you for your question, John, and very pertinent given yesterday's announcement. John asks, in relation to the EU announcement yesterday relating to CSRD reporting, is it correct to assume that if it passes, then the CSRD reporting will not be mandatory for companies under 1,000 employees?
Thank you. Thank you also for the question. Maybe quick context for everyone. So in the EU, there has been conversations around the so-called EU Omnibus Simplification Package with, as the name implies, the intention of simplifying the reporting requirements across the kind of dominant frameworks, which is the EU taxonomy, the CSRD, and the CSRD, soon to be implemented. Due to overlapping requirements, overlapping kind of target groups, the EU set out to simplify their landscape for businesses, which I think we all are in favor of. Now, there have been discussions and leaked proposals the last few days around what this might entail. Now, since yesterday, we actually have a first proposal draft available, released by the EU Commission. And referring to here is a specific one around the CSRD. So the Omnibus package proposes right now in its draft that the mandatory reporting requirements for CSRD would only come into effect for companies with more than 1,000 employees, and some other criteria which have not changed comparison to the original proposal. So an increase in the thresholds from 250 employees to 1,000 employees, which would significantly reduce the amount of companies who have to report under the CSRD. So that is where we stand right now. Now, to your question, directly responded to yes, if this first draft would come into effect as it stands right now, this would change the CSRD reporting requirements and would increase the threshold. So companies below 1,000 would not be affected by the mandatory CSRD disclosure. However, that's very, very important now. Where do we stand right now? This is a first draft of a proposal which has to jump through many, many more regulatory hoops, negotiation processes, before it becomes actually law, before it goes into effect and changes the CSRD. So for all companies out there who are now obliged to report or will soon be and are kind of hoping for being excluded in the future, please, please, please be aware of this is not yet set in stone at all. It is one proposal that has to be discussed now and negotiated. So stay on course. Whatever is required of you right now, this has to be assumed will be also required for you in the future. So do not lay back before anything is decided yet. And again, don't just think about the disclosure requirements that are mandatory as of now or in the future. Think about also just the future of your business. So CSRD is helpful to set you up for success, and nothing is decided yet on the omnibus. I hope this is helpful.
Thank you, Alex. And yeah, John, please, do let us know if that answers your question. I think very thorough. So thank you for that, Alex. And there's also on our website, and we'll send this when we send you the recording, we'll send you a link to a blog post that we've pulled together with Alex, outlining the details of exactly where we are today with Omnibus and what that means for you. So if you want that extra resource, then we'll send that over to you as well. Thank you for your question, John. Riyadh, I will come to you with the next one. And we have a question from one of our attendees about being a one-person sustainability team, which I'm sure you won't be the only person in that boat. So for a one-person sustainability team, how can Normative help me lead the charge and get advocacy for carbon accounting across my business?
It's a great question, and whoever wrote it, don't worry, you're not usually the only one. There's a lot of one-person sustainability teams out there. It is a case where we see quite often, and I think parts of how we support in democratizing that process and making sure that it's no longer the case specifically from a how do you manage it perspective is by the normative platform is built on making carbon visible, making carbon simple, and to all of our customers, part of working with us is majority of our work is very much educational, and we invite a lot of we ask for the invitation for a lot of stakeholders from a company to join, not only to capture data and calculate carbon emissions, but more importantly to kind of get the common understanding and the common grounds in why we do things and what are the results of them. Also, part of our service and how we work with customers is, as I said earlier, making carbon visible, making it simple. And a lot of our customers invite every different department that is responsible for emissions. Practical examples that I can give is, for example, business travel emissions under Scope 3. There is a department that can be responsible for them. That is a department responsible for business travel. Procurement department would be responsible for a different category in Scope 3. Facilities management would be responsible for emissions coming from electricity or fuel. And the moment that you start visualizing these impacts of certain activities of business, and also, again, giving access and giving education on where they come from and putting targets for these, is the moment where you no longer stay as a one-person sustainability team, but rather than sustainability becomes embedded in all different functions. And that's what we work closely with customers on. Education, making it simple, making it understandable, making it digestible, and also sharing best practices in order to get that kind of management approach and structure and your buy-in in order to action and hopefully reduce in the future as well. Hope that answers the question.
Brilliant, thank you, Riyad. I see a number of you on the session saying that you're a one-person sustainability team as well. So yeah, welcome all of you. Hope you're finding it a supportive community out there. I know there are plenty of you. Next question, I'll come back to you, Alex, if I may, from Mike Corzelius. Thank you, Mike. Hopefully I pronounced your surname correctly there. Apologies if I didn't. Alex, where does the 50 million euro threshold apply? Does the proposed regulation state either 1,000 personnel or 50 million euro in business and 25 million euro in holding?
Yes, I mean, one can get easily confused by so many numbers and different thresholds and ways that it's phrased. So the current, and one more time, proposal, draft, nothing fixed yet, states that it would be the threshold of the employees would go up to 1,000 employees, and either turnover above 50 million or balance sheet total exceeding 25 million. Those would be obliged to report. So the 1,000 employee threshold, then you can almost imagine like a decision note. So either you have turnover above 50 million, then you have to report, or you have 1,000 employees and you have a balance sheet exceeding 25 million, and you would also be obliged to report. So that mechanism, this like either or, hasn't changed in comparison to the current still active CSRD draft. It will only be the employee threshold is now suggested to be adjusted. If that helps, I hope it helps. Otherwise, please ask again, Mike.
Thank you very much, Alex. And then just there's another one, if I may keep you on mic at the moment. Another question from Katie asking, can you explain what a company should do that was due to report in 2026 on CSRD, but with Omnibus is now due to report in 2028? Until Omnibus is transposed into legislation, which takes time, the law stands that they need to report next year.
Yes, very, very good. And I'm too particular here on language, but let's be really, really careful here. I think I disagree with parts of your statement, but then in the second part, you do express more nuance there. So the first one is really important. What a company should do that was due to report, that is due to report, okay? You are still due to report. The Omnibus proposal is in a draft state, and that's to your second part. You explained it very well. It has to go through a lengthy process. So do not say you were due. You are due. Prepare as if this will be, this will not change. So my recommendation, of course, not legal advice, not a lawyer. So please don't hold us or me accountable in the end. Follow the debate, definitely, around omnibus, what it means, etc., etc. But prepare yourself for what is currently required of you. And one more time, don't just think about, oh, there's this EU body who's coming in and who asking me for some data points, and I have to go through this nasty exercise. I often compare it with my piano lessons I had when I was a child, or my homework I had to do when I was a teenager. It was a bit of exhausting work at the beginning, but in the end it did pay off because I learned something and I really understood something, or I got a skill that actually I could use later on. And this is the same here for the legislation process. You are right now obliged to, so go through it and make the necessary preparations and also see what you can learn from it. It is not just a burden like a check the box, I'm done with it. There's a lot of stuff to prepare your business for the changing environment. And the environment doesn't care about legislation, right? It will continue to accelerate the change that we already see. So prepare yourself for all applications you have and see the chance to set your business up for success in the process of it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex, as ever, comprehensive. And we've got a few minutes left, so maybe time for one, maybe two more questions. So if we don't get to your question, you valid one, we will follow up with you after this webinar. But lots coming in, and I will come over to you next, Riyadh. What are the most essential skills I need in my organization to build a reliable carbon baseline? You were talking at one of your slides. And the question goes on to ask, how do I get other departments within the business to support this initiative?
You're on
mute, Riyadh. That's a fantastic answer.
Classic. Great question. In terms of skills specifically, or skills in a company to get or build a reliable carbon baseline, to be honest, like today with companies just like Normative, the possibility of companies not focusing on the calculation part is becoming more an option. I'd say that the skills that are most needed really in a sustainability department or sustainability team is very much the mandate to act and the mandate to get people together, different departments together and work on the same goal. I would be much more focused on how getting the departments to support the agenda of carbon accounting and the reduction, really, and that the prerequisites of which are really having defined targets and having visible and a transparent carbon accounting inventory that they can work off of. And when I say mandate, is really there are a lot of different tools that you can manage the carbon inventory, and these could be incentivized tools such as internal carbon pricing, where every department has a budget and they work off of, to things that are more driven by engagement, or again driven by regulatory and compliance related kind of measures. If a company, and what a company should have the most is again embedding those measures and embedding those tools within every department is really what drives the agenda forward. I wouldn't be as focused. I would say just maybe a reliable carbon accounting solution, whether it's built in-house or by other companies, is definitely key to having a sound science, scientifically integral part of the inventory in order to take actions on top of it. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Riyadh. And well, thank you, both of you, Riyadh and Alex, today. That does bring us to the end of our allotted time. I know there are some questions that we haven't got to today. Fear not, as I mentioned, we will be back in touch with you to address those after the webinar. Thank you, all of you, for your engagement and joining us today. It's been fantastic seeing all the questions coming through And we're going to follow up after this webinar with a recording of this. I see a few questions about sharing slides. We will send you the full recording, and we'll also send you that insights post I mentioned earlier about the omnibus proposal. Thank you again. Final reminder, if you wouldn't mind taking 20-30 seconds to fill in our survey that you'll be taken to once we close this webinar, we'd hugely appreciate it to help us improve these going forward. But thank you all for your time today, and we're really looking forward to supporting you, speaking with you, and working with you in the coming weeks and months.